Hello everybody and welcome to another product review video, and today we are going to talk about Daley Rowney. I don't know how you pronounce it, but we're going to talk about these FW Artists inks. I will be completely honest that I am late to the party on these. I only got them about 2 months ago, but I have used them so much since then, they really need their own review video because I love them. And I'm somebody who really loves inks in general and uses them quite a bit in my painting. But these I have found to be exceptional, and so thought they deserved a good review. So, let's talk about what they are. So these Daley Rowney FW Artists Acrylics, as you can see, they're in very big pots, so, you know, as a comparison to a sort of normal paint jar there, so you get the idea of size or paint pot. Size-wise, by the way, they are 29.5 milliliters. I don't think that shows up. Basically, they're an ounce, 1 fluid ounce. Again, compared to, say, like your average paints, which tend to come in somewhere between 12 and 17 milliliters. They're quite heavy, like glass, these bottles, but they will still fit on most of your shelves for, like, if you store paint in like nail polish racks like I do. Most of them, depending on the depth, they'll still sit on the shelf nicely. So you get a lot of it, and the cost is, I think, quite reasonable depending on where you buy it from. On Amazon, these are usually between $7 and $9. You can usually get it like $9 with Prime. They can be like $4 base, but then have $5 shipping from a couple places. They're sold primarily at art stores. So, you know, your Dick Blicks and somebody like that is usually where you find these if you have one of those near you. I haven't looked in the store to see what the price are. I ordered all mine online. I suspect they're probably the same thing. Like with the shipping, they're probably about $10. That is to say, like in real life, they're probably about $10. So at let's call it $9, because that's usually what the average is if you have Prime. At $9 for, you know, 30 effectively milliliters of paint, I find them to be quite a good deal. I have 4 sample colors I have here. These are actually 4 of my favorites, though there are other good colors that I'm not going to talk about today. I particularly love everything in their blue and turquoise range, like their marine blue and their turquoise. Those are also really great if you like those colors. These are, I think, something that make an excellent addition to most people's hobby sort of collection when it comes to paints and inks. I know that a lot of people don't necessarily go for inks as much. Maybe you have your GW shades and you've called it there. I would encourage you to explore the world of inks, especially if you're an airbrusher. And that's where I want to turn and talk about what these are good for. So these are very pigment-rich, dense inks. You don't want to use these like you use a GW shade, because they are way more powerful. They will absolutely tint, or I should say tint is the wrong word. They will absolutely turn whatever you are painting the color of this thing if used straight out of the bottle. As you can see on the side, they have these little markings of what they're good for. Because they're artist stuff, they can also work in all these different pins, which is perfectly useful. But of course, our main concern is the last two, which is an airbrush and a regular brush, and they do work brilliantly in both. The reason I have these colors out, especially, is a couple different things. So first off, orange is always a challenging color for many people. I find orange to often be pretty weak, like orange paint to be pretty weak, to be pretty boring. It doesn't have a lot of pop to it. This is Flame Orange from FW, and I love this color, especially when doing lava and stuff like that. As you can see, it's unbelievably bright and intense, and it's so pigment dense that it is really a shock to the system when you put it on a Mini. This is the kind of thing you almost have to thin to some degree because it's so intense. One of my favorite inks when doing things like flame and fire and lava and stuff like that. However, if I was going to tell you to get one of these inks, if you just wanted to get one to experiment with, my recommendation would absolutely be the Daley Rowney FW Artist Acrylic Ink White. Just the regular old white. And this is a game changer, I think, for most people. When I watch a lot of people paint white, they talk about how hard it is to get good coverage. They talk about it ends up looking chalky. White is an easy color to screw up because white paint is naturally dry, is naturally chalky, and is very hard to make look smooth and clean. This is not like that. This white is like butter. Great for your airbrush, great for your regular brush, and we're gonna make that real for you here right now. Here I have some armor from the Iron Jaws, and if you watched a video I did about actually using or doing the freehand on my Iron Jaws armor, you'll know I use these inks as part of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some little Iron Jaws flames here on the back. And we're going to use just the ink by itself. I just got a little bit onto a brush there. And kind of wick it off because you notice it is very fluid. It will really flow. And we're just going to go ahead and put some little flames in there so you can see how it performs. As you can see, it wicks off the brush very easily. It gives me a nice, smooth, crisp, clean white. Now, one of the big advantages to this white is because it's so smooth and clean, is that you can let it dry and apply multiple layers, although that won't always be necessary. Now, so there you go. You can see the coverage on that. That's over a pretty dark blue, almost black, down there at the edge. One quick note about this is this ink, because it's ink, and inks in general, will tend to sort of soak into your paint. What I mean by that is they will look more intense when you initially put them on than when they fully dry and cure. Because once they fully set, which doesn't take that long, by the way, after a couple minutes, it's going to look a little bit less intense than when you first put it on, because some of that ink is going to get down into the layers from before because it is such a liquid. It's going to actually soak in a little bit to the paint. These inks can also be a great way. They actually mix really well with other acrylic paint. So what I like to do with the white is actually mix it a little bit with some regular old white acrylic paint. If you're curious in this particular, I'm using Game Effects Rotten White with a little bit of Flow Aid. And what you get then is a little bit stronger coverage. But it can also just make your regular white paint pop and cover a lot better. Make it more liquid, make it more smooth. So I'll go ahead over here and put on a quick second layer. Generally, it's just 2, by the way, even with the ink alone, and you get a beautiful smooth white. And if you've ever tried to paint clean white before, you know that you are generally in a boat where you're using more than 2 coats. This is pretty much 2 and done, and you get a beautiful, non-chalky, crisp white every time. But the ink can be a great way to almost thin your paint, is really what happens. You're using, and that's how I end up using these inks a lot. One of the sort of easy tricks with these inks is a lot of people often have challenges thinning their paints and still getting good results because the paint sort of breaks down or it doesn't cover as well or something like that. Inks can be a great way to thin your paints because they themselves are naturally more medium rich while still keeping your intense color. That's another way that I use things like the sepia and the other one I'm going to talk about today. Because I have a number 2 favorite I'm also going to share with you. The key to good freehand, unrelated somewhat, but just to talk through it real quick, has very little to do, at least initially, with your artistic skill or ability to draw freehand. The first thing you really need to master to do good freehand is just thinning your paint into something that will wick off the brush easily and provide you nice, sharp, clean lines. Not that this is the most complicated freehand pattern ever, it's just little squiggly lines. But the point is that inks can help you do that, and this Daley Rowney ink is excellent for that purpose, especially the white. So there you go. You can see how we put those on there, and they look nice and sharp. Look at how opaque that is, even against the black, with just those quick, thin coats. Again, this is why the white is the one I would absolutely recommend. When I see people have challenges with their hobby, the most common place they have it is with the color white. So there you go. Now, let's move them back in here. My second favorite is the Payne's Gray, which is an extremely dark blue-black, which is a funny name to be gray, but it's a very dark blue-black. This is such a wonderful color to make part of your, if you're doing non-metallic, steel non-metallic metal, clean cold steel, this is just your go-to. It's unbelievable. This is such a perfect base for it. It's a wonderful dark blue-black if you want to see what it looks like. I have another piggy here. Hello, Mr. Piggy. And for this guy, what we're going to do is we'll grab a little bit of that ink, and you can see it in action here. I'm going to go ahead and drop it down in his hair here, which is, again, another, I'm almost going to use it like a shade color here. You can see how it goes on there nice and smooth. And then I can actually just void my brush. I'm literally just wiping it on a paper towel to the side, and then I can just get back in there and just kind of smooth it out a little, pull it out. Back here on this armor plate, if I wanted to darken the top part up a little, I'll take a little bit of the ink watered down. And again, these are very easy to actually work with. You can water them down very easy, and then I can just very lightly glaze some of that on and push my color tone down a little. Okay. So you can see how you can work with them both straight out of the pot or quite thinned like a glaze. They mix with water. They mix with normal acrylic paint very easily, and they give you an extremely powerful result if you need it, or a nice thin tint if you want it. But they're always smooth. Inks are also great out of your airbrush. They're wonderful for doing shading. Oftentimes airbrushed minis look like they have an airbrushed look. These can help you get rid of that because the ink will sort of soak in, smooth out the tones, get rid of that almost powdery look that an airbrush can create. Inks as a final step, especially thinned down and an almost all over coat, can be an awesome way to get rid of that look. So there you go. I hope I've sold you on the benefits of the ink. I really do think they're an amazing tool in your hobby arsenal. I'm going to do a full-fledged ink review here soon in my hobby cheating series and talk about all of the different brands of inks, much like I did the paint guide. But I wanted to get these because they're a bit out of the box, and I quite like them. There are many other inks I do use regularly and do like, but these, especially these colors, the sepia, this is just straight sepia. The Payne's Gray, the white, and the Flame Orange are four of my absolute favorites that I find have effects that are difficult to replicate in the other inks that are out there. So these are the ones these are sort of my go-tos. And if I was going to organize them, it would look something like that in my favorites: white, gray, orange, and then sepia last, just in case you're curious. But like I said, at about $9 for 30 milliliters, one bottle will last your whole life. The bottle itself, as you can see, opens and it has this little eyedropper in it. It's actually quite easy to get the paint out of, drop onto your palette, and go. I've never had a problem with these. They tend to the little dropper bottles work very easy and clean, seal very tightly. So I like the construction of the bottle. Like I said, it's really a nice, heavy glass. Don't drop them from a high distance onto a hard floor, or you are going to have just an unbelievable nightmare on your hands. So you do have to be a bit more careful with them in that regard. But overall, I would give the FW Artist Acrylics absolutely an A when it comes to using them in miniature painting. I think they're fantastic whether you work brush or airbrush, mix with paint or straight, use as glazes, or as part of sort of blends. They are truly useful in a lot of different ways. So there you go. I hope this is useful to you. I will throw a Amazon link down below to some of the artist acrylics, so you can actually go take a look at them and see what I'm talking about. I know if you're outside the US, I'm not sure it will work normally, but there you go. But I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found this review useful. And as always, appreciate you watching. Give it a like if you did. Subscribe for more product reviews, hobby cheating, and everything else in the future. Share this with somebody who's maybe been thinking about picking up some inks. That sharing is always the nicest thing you can do. And as always, we'll see you next time.